So, Fags, gonna bust out this week one college rundown. Every week we're gonna do this. That way, the Switzerland fellas and the guys in Australia can have an idea of what's going on in the college game, because I know they don't get to check out the games like we do here in the States. So here we go. Usually I'm going to have Richie with me doing this, but he had a draft to do tonight, and I had to work late, so I just got home a little bit ago, and I'm going to just bust this shit out and roll through it kind of quick. So here we go. Week one. I'm going to start with the game from last Thursday. Was number 9 Tennessee. They played Appalachian State. It was a real good game. I watched most of it on TV. The final score ended up being 20-13. Tennessee won, but it went to overtime, and actually Appalachian State was dominating the whole first half and into the third quarter, and Tennessee pulled it out of their ass. Tennessee has a quarterback in Josh Dobbs. He wasn't very accurate. He's a running quarterback. He threw for 192 yards and a touchdown and an interception. Appalachian State's quarterback, Taylor Lamb, he threw for only 108 yards with a touchdown and interception. It was mostly a defensive game with a little bit of the running back for Tennessee. He looks all right. His name is Jalen Hurd. He toted the rock 28 times, only for 110 yards and a touchdown. No real big names in this one to really care about as far as the draft goes. Tennessee has a defensive player who actually got kicked out of the game, who might be a first-round pick. I believe he's a linebacker. I forgot his name. But that sums up that game. I'm just going to kind of roll through these relatively quick and not spend an hour on this shit, because I doubt anybody wants to sit here and watch my ugly mug for an hour. So moving on to the next game I have right here was number 19 Louisville playing against Charlotte. That wasn't even a game. The final score was 70-14. I'm not really going to waste any time on that game. There isn't really any pro prospects to really give a shit about there. 70-14. It was a blowout. Next game was on Friday of last week. Number 8 Stanford beat Kansas State. Stanford, as you know, has a Heisman candidate in Christian McCaffrey, running back. He looks pretty good. Not a huge guy, but he looks like he could handle a good workload. I think he's only like 5'10" or something, but he toted it for 22 carries, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught 7 passes for 40 yards. Pretty, he'll be, like I said, he's a Heisman candidate. He's solid. Going to be probably a first-round pick in our fantasy draft next year. They have a quarterback, Ryan Burns, who completed 14 of 18 passes, 156 yards, and a touchdown. Kansas State, I don't really know of anyone on that team. They usually have a pretty tough team every year, but Stanford's they're a team that can compete for the playoffs this year in college football. So moving on here, as soon as it comes back up. All right. I got the next game right here is Michigan State. They played Furman, wherever the hell that is. I have no idea. They won 28-13. Michigan State's out of the Big Ten. They always have a tough team. Always a really good defense. You know, they always turn out decent running backs in the pros the last few years. They'll be a tough team. They won 28-13, like I said. Not much to really talk about there. Baylor beat Northwestern State. Who cares? They won 55-7. I'll probably get more into detail on all this stuff when Richie is on here with me. We can discuss some shit, but for the most part, I'm just going to run through it. At least the games that don't mean anything. Like I said, 23 ranked Baylor beat Northwestern State 55-7, complete blowout. It looks like the quarterback for Baylor was 14 of 20, 163 yards, 4 touchdowns. So his name is Seth Russell. So there's that. Next game on here that says is a Buckeyes. Ohio State ran through Bowling Green State University, which is just south of Toledo, where me and Richie are from. Ohio State blew them out 77-10. As you guys all know from my Facebook, it was a total blowout. JT Barrett he's the quarterback for Ohio State. He was removed in like the middle of the third quarter, and he already had 350 yards passing with 6 touchdowns and another touchdown running the ball. Mike Weber, who is the running back who replaced Zeke, had 19 carries, 136 yards. He looked good. And then Curtis Samuel had 9 catches, 177 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Ohio State's really young and inexperienced this year, but they can play with anybody, boy. I look forward to it. And so I'll move on from that blowout. The next blowout here is Alabama crushed USC, which was a premier game this week, number 1 versus number 20. USC hasn't done nothing in years, basically since that dickhead coach in Seattle left the Trojans. Alabama romped them 52-6. It wasn't even a game. What can you? Alabama marched out I believe he's a freshman quarterback. His name's Jalen Hurts. 6 of 11 passing, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. Damian Harris for Alabama ran 9 carries, 138 yards. And Stewart, the wide receiver, 4 catches, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns. It looked like USC quit in this game. It was a blowout. It was up there at Cowboy Stadium. Just a disaster way for USC to start. Everyone expects Alabama to be in the playoffs. Clemson played Auburn, which was another marquee game. Auburn's not ranked, but Clemson's ranked number 2. They got obviously some big names that'll be in the draft next year when Deshaun Watson and Mike Williams, the receiver. They both look like studs. Actually, Williams had some drops in that game, but I mean, he'll bounce back. The dude, he looks real good. Watson's probably going to be the first pick in the draft, I'd imagine. Going to go to your 49ers, Anthony, and it'd be a good start for those guys to get Watson. Watson threw 19 of 34 passing, 248 yards and a touchdown. Mike Williams, as I said, 9 catches, 174 yards. And he had, I don't know, I think he dropped like 2 or 3 passes in that game. I don't know, but he could have had much, much more. Moving on, the first upset of the day was number 15 Houston beating number 3 Oklahoma, 33-23. I had posted that I think it was Oklahoma was kicking a 53-yard field goal, and they missed it. The kid for Houston caught it like at the back of the end zone and ran 109 yards for a touchdown. It was a badass play. Houston has a quarterback in his name's Ward. He looked real good. Here, let me bring up some of the stats on him. He looked real good. He looks real slim, like a Teddy Bridgewater type, but he's more mobile. His name is Greg Ward Jr., 23 of 40 passing, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield, who is a Heisman candidate for Oklahoma, he probably pissed away the Heisman Trophy by getting his ass beat in this game, but he was 24 of 33, passing 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon only had 6 carries, the running back for Oklahoma, for 40 yards and a touchdown. That's about really it as far as any fantasy implications go on guys coming out next year. So I know Oklahoma fell big time in the rankings this week. I'll cover that at the end of this little show here. But Houston with the big upset. I don't know if they have what it takes again in the playoffs, being a small school. Even if they go undefeated, I doubt they get the bid to be in the playoff. But crazier shit has happened. We'll see what happens. The next upset of the week was a Wisconsin beating the LSU Tigers there in Lambeau Field. I watched a good portion of that game. It was really boring. Obviously, LSU has some studs that are going to be on that are going to get drafted next year. They have a couple of defensive players that are really good. They have the receiver. Shit, what's his name? I'll bring it up right now. Obviously, they have Leonard Fournette. When I was watching the game, it's like he didn't really pop off on the screen. Like, man, like, damn. But when I looked at the box score, like, damn, he had 138 yards. So, I mean, he did all right. 23 carries, 138 yards. No touchdowns, but that guy is probably going to be the number 1 pick in dynasty drafts next year, I would assume. The receiver I was thinking of is Malachi Dupree for LSU. He only had 3 catches for 24 yards, but I've heard really good things about him. The problem with LSU is their shitty-ass quarterback. Brandon Harris, 12 of 21 passing, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. The last pick that ended the game was just like the worst interception you'll see. I mean, he threw it right to the guy. But as for Wisconsin, they have a running back who looks good, but Wisconsin always has good running backs every year. It seems like Melvin Gordon and all those guys who've come from Wisconsin, but usually they don't do shit in the pros. The kid's name is Corey Clement. He had 21 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. So I know Wisconsin jumped up big time in the ranks this week. LSU dropped big time. I'll give you guys a little prediction as to LSU. I think Les Miles will get fired this year, and I mean that's probably not a shocker, but I think Chip Kelly will be the one who takes his spot at LSU next year. He's not long for the NFL, and after the disaster season San Francisco has this year, and they fired the GM, the new GM will come in and clean house, and they're going to start over and draft Deshaun Watson, and it'll be a new era in San Francisco next year. So, moving on. All right. Next game is really no one gives a shit. Michigan played Hawaii. They won 63-3. Who cares? I don't like Michigan. I don't even like saying their name. But they got some Jabril Peppers. I hear he's going to be a top 5 pick. You know, they talked that big game. Jim Harbaugh talks all that shit. But this year will come and go, and they're not going to beat Ohio State. Doesn't matter. They haven't beat Ohio State in like the last 10 years. So, moving on. TCU beat South Dakota State 59-41. Who cares? TCU has turned out some good players lately. Well, I don't know about Josh Doctson yet, but and Trevon Boykin, whatever the hell his name is, the asshole who hit the cop here in San Antonio last year during the bowl game, got suspended for the game. He's the backup in Joe's Seahawks now. But TCU routed them. They're ranked 13th. So they're always a pretty good team. They got a really good coach. Kenny Hill, the quarterback for TCU, threw for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then the receiver for South Dakota State had 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. His name is Jake Wienke. Never heard of him, but it's pretty impressive. Almost 200 yards receiving. Moving on, Washington. They have a bunch of hype on them this year. I've heard a lot of things about Washington. Our buddy Joe could probably talk to that. They routed Rutgers 48-13. Blowout Central. Jake Browning of Washington, 18 of 27 passing, 287 yards, 3 touchdowns. John Ross, the receiver for Washington, 5 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. Let's see. The next game was another upset. Texas A&M, the Aggies, beat number 16 UCLA over here in College Station, just about an hour and a half up the road. I know quarterback for Texas A&M, Trevor Knight, he's from here in San Antonio. He was 22 of 42 passing, 239 yards, touchdown, and a pick. Not all that impressive, but he did have 31 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns rushing. Let's see. Trayvon Williams, the running back for A&M, 94 yards on 15 carries. That's pretty nice. And Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver, 4 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. UCLA has turned out some pretty good players over the years. They got Jim Mora as their coach. Nothing impressive here. Looks like their running back, Jamambo, ran for 91 yards on 23 carries. And their quarterback, Josh Rawson, 343 yards, a touchdown, and 3 picks. Ouch. So UCLA goes down already. So UCLA and USC got their ass beat. Not a good weekend in Southern California. And I'm sure I know that the LA Rams aren't getting good news on Jared Goff. I guess he's going to be inactive this week. So bad news all the way over there in Southern California, but at least their weather's nice. Next game I got here is number 17, Iowa routed Miami of Ohio. No one cares. 45-21. Doesn't look like any player here really jumps off the screen at me. 12 carries for Wadley, Iowa's running back, for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. So really nothing to give a shit about there. The next game was pretty good. I watched some of it. Was number 18 Georgia against number 22 North Carolina. Georgia won 33-24. Obviously, the big name to watch there, fantasy-wise, that would be a first-round pick more than likely in the NFL draft and in fantasy drafts next year, at dynasty leagues at least. Nick Chubb, who came off the ACL injury from last year, dominated. He had 32 carries, 222 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Doesn't look like that knee was bothering him too much. He looked like a beast. Isaiah McKenzie, the receiver for Georgia, 6 catches, 122 yards, touchdown. And like I said, Nick Chubb's going to be a dog in the NFL, depending on who gets him. Next game I got here was number 21, Oklahoma State. Beat the shit out of Southeastern Louisiana, 61-7. Not even going to waste much time on that. No, really nothing stood out there. I I know Joe likes Oregon. Oregon's ranked 24th. They played UC Davis. What was that, like some I don't even know what kind of school that is, but they won 53-28. I'm surprised they gave up 28 goddamn points to whoever that is. But it looks like Ben Scott. Oh hell, that's for UCD. Yeah, who cares? Man, over here on the top performers list, and there's not even an Oregon player. Darren Carrington of Oregon, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. I didn't watch the game. Doesn't sound all that impressive. I don't care. Moving on. 25, Florida. 25th ranked Florida played Massachusetts. 24-7 was the score. I've heard some things about Florida this year. They're young and talented, I guess, but not a dominating win over Massachusetts. They're let's see, no numbers really jump off the page right there. Florida's quarterback Luke Del Rio, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nothing special. The next game was the game of the week, man. Texas, in an upset win, beat number 10 ranked Notre Dame. That was a hell of a game. Went into 2 overtimes. The final score is 50-47. It was a hell of a game, man. Notre Dame has 2 really good quarterbacks in Zaire and damn, I can't remember the other one's name. I'll pull it up right now. Waiting. Okay. Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire, the 2 quarterbacks at Notre Dame. Kaiser, 15-24 passing, 215 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He looked real good. Zaire, he's more of a runner. He was only 2 of 5 passing, 23 yards. But Zaire, he didn't do much rushing either. But Kaiser also had 13 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. So Kaiser had 6 total touchdowns, so that'll put him on the Heisman map. Folston for Notre Dame, 18 carries, 88 yards. Let's see. What else can I can't even pronounce the guy's name, but his last name is St. Brown for Notre Dame. He's a receiver. He had 2 touchdown catches. And as far as Texas goes, they also have 2 quarterbacks that play over there. One was a true freshman, Bouchel, I believe his last name is. He looked real good. 16 of 26 passing, 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the dude like has an arm. He looked good. Then Foreman, the running back for Texas, 24 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. The other quarterback for Texas is Tyrone Swoops. He had 13 carries for 53 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. And Texas receivers kind of let them down, man. They dropped some passes, but they still look good. John Burt, he had dropped a wide open touchdown, but he had 6 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. It was a really good game. So I know Texas jumped up way up in the rankings this week. They weren't even ranked. Now they're, I think, ranked 11th, if I remember right. So as soon as my computer gets right, I'll be able to finish this up. The last ranked game of the week was number 4 Florida State against number 11 ranked Ole Miss. Everyone knows about Florida State and Dalvin Cook, the running back. Yeah, he wasn't very impressive. Only 23 carries for 91 yards. So he wasn't real impressive. Francois, the quarterback for Florida State, threw for 419 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Ole Miss quarterback, I guess he's a potential first-round pick. His name's Chad Kelly. 21 to 39 passing, 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 picks. I don't know. Maybe that might knock him out of the first round. But I've heard a little hype around that guy. He threw to Treadwell last year and all that. But other than that, Ole Miss didn't have any big-time running back performances. Evan Ingram, their wide receiver, had 9 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. And over there at Florida State, Dalvin Cook had 7 catches also with 101 yards on top of his rushing totals. And Wilson, the receiver for Florida State, had 9 catches, 125 yards. So that's the rundown on week 1 of the college season. Every week, like I said, I'll get Richie to roll with me, and we'll cover the top 25 games and let you know what's happening and what the stars are doing, and that way you guys can know what's going on. I'll go ahead and pull up the rankings for this week. The new rankings for week 2 go as Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4, Michigan 5. This is the AP poll, by the way. Houston moved up to 6 after being Oklahoma. Stanford 7, Washington 8, Georgia 9, Wisconsin moved from unranked all the way up to 10th with their 2-point win over LSU. I think they're blowing them up a little too much. Texas jumped all the way up to 11th after not being ranked, but like I said, Texas looks pretty good. Michigan State's at 12, Louisville's at 13. Oklahoma fell from 3 down to 14. They play Ohio State here in a couple weeks. I look forward to that game. TCU is down to 15. They actually fell 2 spots after winning. Iowa's up 1 to 16, up to 16. Tennessee dropped 8 spots, even though they won. But like I said, it's very unimpressive, and they dropped 8 spots down to 17. Notre Dame dropped 8 spots down to 18 after they lost to Texas. Ole Miss dropped 8 spots down to 19 after losing to Florida State. Texas A&M jumped into the rankings. They're at 20. LSU fell 16 spots down to 21. Oklahoma State down 1 spot to 22. Baylor jumped into the rankings at 23. Oregon still sitting there at 24. And the University of Miami, oh boy, is at 25. So those are the teams I'll cover next week. We'll go over their games. And there's really no impressive games this week. All the big schools are playing nobody. So look forward to a bunch of ass whoopings next week. So that's that for this week, and we'll roll on next week. Peace.